Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Neo Marketing Podcast. This is a bonus third Wednesday of the month, end of the year episode. We're going to talk about 2020, the wild ride it's been, and what to expect in 2021.
He's Kyle. I'm Pritch. Welcome back.
Welcome to the Golden Group Neo Marketing Podcast, a bi-weekly discussion of best practices, latest trends, and modern techniques for professional business communication, including advertising, marketing, digital channels, social media, public relations, and alternative options.
All right, we're here. Mr. Saturday Morning Hustle.
That's me. I'm Mr. Saturday. I'm Mr. Saturday Morning Hustle. For those of you guys who don't know, my personal podcast is the Saturday Morning Hustle. I've got my swag, my Saturday Morning Hustle swag on today.
Check it out.
I come in the office every Saturday, get some work done. Phone's not ringing. The emails are not pinging me. I really feel productive.
I hate that pinging email.
I feel productive working on Saturdays, but 2020 has definitely been a year of got to get some extra work done.
Man,
there's been no rest for anyone, wicked or otherwise, in 2020.
Warrior.
What a roller coaster this has been,
dude,
right?
I tell you what.
So we're going to end 2020 with this special bonus episode. We're going to talk a little bit about what the ideas, some of the concepts we talked about this year, revisit some of our favorites, and then give you guys an idea of what 2021 looks like. Of course, we do this in the anticipation that we want to hear from you about what you would like to see and hear, see in the videos, hear on the podcast, see in our social media, etc. for 2021, topics that you want to hear from.
Come on.
All about you guys. It's not about us. It's about you guys. So let's talk about the year that was, that no one's ever going to forget, 2020. So we started the year off actually pretty well.
It wasn't bad. Little did we know that it was amongst us already.
Right. So
and then it went south in a hurry.
It was going great until it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Very typical year, January and February. We all started hearing from the media and these ideas that there was something on the horizon, something that was happening around the globe. We didn't know what would eventually result in what we all know as COVID-19 or the coronavirus. And this is a business podcast. So of course, we have stayed focused on what businesses can and should be doing to remain viable in COVID-19.
And you talked a lot about adapt, adopt, and pivot.
That's right. Adapt, adopt, and pivot was exactly the approach that we took early on. First, it was, hey, things are going to change. We're not sure to what degree, so let's start adapting, right? Let's start making some changes to business models, adding tools, communicating, over-communicating. You can't over-communicate at this point, right? Over-communicate how your business is operating to your audience so that they know if they can come in physically or not, if they need to do delivery or curbside, etc. That was step one. Of course, adopting.
And as it progressed.
So we thought it would be 2 weeks, right?
Short,
The 2 week shutdown turned into 2 months. That turned into a quarter. And
so now we're adopting.
We
have
adding
adapted.
Whole sections of business model to what we were already doing for a business to stay open. And also at this time too, and it went from this is not temporary to this looks like not permanent but not temporary, somewhere in between. Of course, the uncertainty is the problem. We talked about the fact that you're going to have to adapt, you're going to have to adopt, and that at some point you stop thinking about profit and focus on cash flow and surviving. And that was still a temporary fix, if you will. Then when we all realized that this whole thing was not even something that was going to finish in 2 quarters, and maybe it was go 3 or 4, and who knows, 6, 8, 12 quarters, how many quarters will we end up with coronavirus affecting business? That's when we could start the conversation about pivoting, right? If your business can't operate the way it did pre-COVID, 100% shut down, you have to pivot. You have to take that drastic step of pivot. And then, of course, we ended 2 weeks ago on the podcast with don't be quick to pivot back.
Right.
So come full circle on the ideas of adapt, adopt, and pivot. Yep. So that was some of the areas that we focused on in 2020 because obviously the most massive news story and the thing most affecting businesses of any sort and every sort in 2020 was COVID-19 and the limitations and restrictions that came with it on dealing with business transactions.
Yep, absolutely. And we had some other points, too. I mean, we continued to talk about leadership in its various aspects. I think we talked about a number of aspects of leadership.
Yes,
right?
For sure.
And one of my favorite topics was, and we maintained focus on crisis as well. And my favorite topic was the apology impulse. Yeah. Thanks to the authors for that. We really appreciate.
We had a ton of great interaction online and social media with the authors of the book, the Apology Impulse, and with you out there, everyone listening to the podcast too, because we took it a step further. We were really aggressive in the idea of not apologizing, and of course that big hashtag idea, cancel culture.
Yeah, absolutely. We ended up I kept watching this. And more and more and more and more, the closer we got to the election, the more cancel culture became the weapon of choice.
Yes.
And it absolutely, in a crisis, regardless of pandemic or the election or whatever, I don't think we're ever going to go back to cancel culture not being a key feature of the crisis, which means,
unfortunately, yes,
you have to be really careful about what you're apologizing for, when you apologize, and how you apologize.
Absolutely, for sure, 100%. We had several conversations surrounding the Apology Impulse book and the ideas behind it. Great interaction from you guys out there. We appreciate you guys on social media and on the different podcast platforms providing us feedback of the things you thought we were right on about, the things that you disagreed with us about. And again, the authors of the book jumped into the conversation as well. We appreciate those guys.
Absolutely.
And crisis communication has always been one of our key factors,
right?
Because there's so little room for failure, but there's so many people who still try to do crisis communication the way you did it in the 50s and the 60s and the 90s and 2000.
In 2000, in 2019,
right?
It's changed. It
completely
is
different.
Changed
100%.
And it's major if you mess it up. I mean, it always has been, but it's even worse now.
The speed. And then the breadth of channels that information comes across, positive and negative, is why crisis management, crisis communication is so 100% essential to have control of as much as possible. And, there's only so much you can control, and it goes back to the idea of control what you can.
Right.
The rest is going to work itself out, right?
Right.
But the biggest move away from traditional, and I'm going to do the air quotes again, traditional, if you will, crisis communication ideas. Number one was speed, of course, and we all understand that. But number two is something that you have been driving home, and you're evangelical about it. Protocols, not plans.
Yeah, protocols, not plans.
Right?
Ding dong, the plan is dead. I don't even want 10 seconds of silence. Thank you.
I like that. No 10 seconds of silence. Just get right on with it, right?
Get right on with it, right. Just forget about plans. Protocols are process-oriented. They're not specific
and
incident-oriented. And they are. I mean, they define the lanes. Everybody knows what their job is. Everybody knows where to go for information. But it's not, a checklist. Step one is, in a sense, it's process and so there is a little bit of a checklist to it, but it's not pulling some plan off of the shelf that was developed 3 years ago.
That's me blowing dust off a plan.
And blow the dust off of it, and then do this, and then do this, and then do this, and then do this. It's impossible for you to hit every eventuality.
Right.
It's absolutely impossible. And even when you're close, it's different.
For sure.
So protocols help you understand the process of responding, and within that is a lot of autonomy, which is really important, but also there's a lot of direction because you understand the process.
And in order to empower your employees properly through the right protocols for crisis communication or otherwise, and it could be a scandal, but could also be a fire in the building. There's all kinds of crisis communication.
Right.
public and internal, if you will. But the empowerment of your employees, because you provide them the protocols and then do the proper training and the proper internal communication,
Right.
is a leadership skill.
It is, absolutely, and a leadership imperative.
That's right. So that's how all of these ideas kind of combine back into each other. So there's so many aspects of running a business, managing a business, internal and external, doing the marketing and the communication outward, the feedback that comes back to you, the two-way conversation, how it changes and affects your internal processes, your internal communication, your protocols, all the things that happen in the four walls, if you will, of a building, of a business, and then how that translates into the relationship and the transaction, and then hopefully the repeatable business model and the value offer and all of these things. And this big giant circle, business never ends.
But we talked about some really important aspects of that cycle. We've spent a lot of time on goals. We spent a lot of time on objectives, which many even PR professionals don't understand.
A lot of people get those things
crazy.
Yeah, they get them all mixed up.
And we talked about strategy.
Yes.
And how all those pieces
My
fit
favorite
together.
word, the S word, strategy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And where evaluation and measurement comes into things too. So
right. There's a ton of misconceptions there, and it's one of those things that's simple on paper. It's really difficult to adapt and implement into any organization, because every organization is different because of the people, because of what you're trying to accomplish, because of the infrastructure you have. And so you can't take it on paper and be super hard structured. You have to start with the ideas, the outline of goals, objectives, strategy, tactics, all the way down the path.
Right.
Of course, measurement, and it comes back, and then you make your adjustments, 80-20, all of those concepts, right?
Yep.
But you still have to have empowered employees who communicate with each other, and leadership that delegates that authority to do so in order for this to function on a daily basis in business, because no 2 days are the same in business.
Right, exactly.
And
And
that's
especially
essentially what we do when we go on this podcast, is talk about the eventualities and the fact that it's not going to work 100% of the time.
Right.
Nothing ever works 100% of the time, so you have to understand how to move forward with the things that don't work as expected, and actually take those negatives and turn them into positives. That's another real concept that we really drove home for 2020, because there were a lot of negatives in the world, but you had to find ways to at least either mitigate them from negatives to a neutral, or make positives out of them, adapt to the situation.
Well, I do think that we did a pretty good job, and we'll let the viewers and listeners tell us whether or not we
Love
did.
to hear that feedback.
But 2020 was bizarre. It was absolutely bizarre. Everything got turned on its head. And so I think I'm proud of the fact that we addressed some issues that of real importance to businesses and entrepreneurs.
Right.
In a bizarro, upside-down world.
Well, it is what it is. And the thing about running a business in 2020 was your competitors and everyone in your market, and everyone kind of competing for that same economic value, were all being affected by the same things.
Right.
So it wasn't a competitor had found a competitive advantage, if you will, and was kind of kicking your butt in the market. We were all in the same boat there, of the limitations and the things that were happening and the expectations, but also the understanding of providing value, that we're not in business simply just to transact and make money, that we're trying to provide something of value. Sometimes it's something people need, like food or medicine, or services like ours, where it helps their businesses stay profitable and viable, because they pay their employees, they pay their taxes, there's economic value in their community.
Yep.
There's all kinds of good that comes from business when businesses are run properly, with a value proposition, and ethically. And ethics is always, of course, the
Ethics has
topics that we
been
want to jump on as
huge.
well.
Absolutely.
People are afraid of talking about ethics. We love talking about ethics.
Absolutely.
Because nothing but good comes from focusing on ethics when it comes to business.
Yep. So, looking forward in 2021,
Yes.
I think more of the same. Ethics, as you mentioned, is always going to be on the shot list, if you will, right? On the topic list. We'll continue to talk about crisis. We'll continue to talk about leadership.
Yep.
We'll continue to talk about business development, and adapt, adopt, and pivot. I think is going to continue to be important in 21 until we reach I'm going to say, stable post-COVID world.
That's a good way of thinking about it, I think, for sure. Something else that will be a part of 2021, because I've got some great stuff lined up, is having guests on the program. We had some great guests in 2020. Just in December here, we had Corey Walker from Inside Partners. We've had a lot of great guests on the podcast. We had the guys from Broke Brewing.
Yeah.
Can you imagine starting a brewery, and then literally the day after they opened the tap room, the state of Oklahoma shut down because of coronavirus. So they had some insights as well. And how does the idea of taking your passion, brewing beer and turning it into a business.
Right.
We had some great guests like that this year. Of course, previously, while you spent time in Italy teaching your class overseas, we had a lot of great guests while you were gone in 2019, right? Before that. So 2019, we had a plethora of guests while you were out of the country. 2020, we had some great guests as well. 2021, we definitely will continue the idea of bringing in some great guests with some outside expertise, outside of what Pritch and I bring to the table, and giving you fresh perspectives and answering the questions you guys have. So that's another reason that we need the feedback from everyone listening to this or finding us on social media. Is let us know what you're interested in, let us know what you need to know about your business, what you would like to learn, and even suggest guests to us. Who do you think that we should put on the podcast? Do you think would bring great insight? Right. And tell us topics, tell us people, tell us ideas. Give us ideas, and we'll run with them, and we'll give you credit for it, of course, too.
Absolutely. And I want to hear some outlandish ideas. I really do. I really want to debate some things that maybe I don't agree with.
Okay.
But feedback from our audience.
You heard the man.
So challenges.
Throw the challenges out. Yep. So 2021, we will try to continue the things that we felt very solid about, the things that you guys are giving us good feedback on. We'll try to add 80-20, right? We're going to do 80% of that. 20% of the time we experiment with some guests, with some different topics. Who knows? Maybe we'll get all Saturday Morning Hustle on the on the podcast, and we get more. I think it's a little bit more motivational and hustle driven than it is business driven than we're here. But we'll keep adapting, adopting, and pivoting ourselves as we try to help you guys get through COVID-19 and normal business practices, and then just building businesses from the ground up, startups, being an entrepreneur, running your business well, running your business ethically, being effective and efficient, creating economic value for yourself, for your families, for your employees, for your communities, etc. It's a big, huge circle of value for everyone. We're going to continue to try to help you do your best in that process in 2021 on the Neo Marketing Podcast.
There we go. I'm excited.
Until then, good luck.
Ciao.
This has been the Golden Group Neo Marketing Podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Tell a friend, leave a review, and engage with us on social media. Thanks for listening.